this is Liz from People I Think Are Cool, a bi-weekly podcast where I interview my favorite creatives from across the globe. If you're looking for a dose of creative inspiration, then go to peopleithinkarecool.com or subscribe to People I Think Are Cool on iTunes and Stitcher.
You like film, from cult to classic, from blockbuster to B-movies. And there just isn't that one place with all the fan fervor and passion that's covering the kind of mad, diverse brilliance that you love.
Well, that's where you're wrong.
AfterMovieDiner.com is that fan-built movie nirvana just for you, featuring the sweet, sweet writings of the wife Dork herself. AfterMovieDiner.com. Go there. Be the best you can be.
You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast, the official podcast of the Alamo Drafthouse, Winchester.
Welcome to another edition of the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. Joining me today is Billy Dass, the Indie Dork. What's up, Billy?
Everything is up. Everything is coming up, Millhouse.
And I, of course, am Brad Gullickson, the Mouth of Dork. We are coming from the parking lot of the AFI Silver.
Yeah.
Where the Spooky International Movie Festival has just kicked off.
What movie did they kick off with, Brad?
They kicked off with the new restoration of Phantasm.
It's funny that you mentioned Phantasm. That's a great movie.
That is a great movie. I love that movie.
Do you know who I love more than that movie?
Who's that?
The guy who made that movie. Don Coscarelli.
Yes.
Phantasm.
Yes.
Beastmaster.
Yes.
Bubba Ho-Tep.
Vision Quest.
Vision Quest. Don't forget Vision Quest. John dies at the end. That Don Coscarelli.
Yeah. And here we are. We just got done having a conversation with him.
Which I think explains the punchiness.
Yeah, and it was wild. We've talked to a lot of cool people, but Phantasm had such tremendous impact on my own childhood, and throughout my teen years, I still adore that movie. Of course, Bubba Hotep, that was such an epic experience and really introduced me to my love of Joe R. Lansdale's work. And then here we are. We just stormed into the AFI Silver. We took over their conference room. We went behind the scenes. That was awesome.
It's so crazy when you say it like that, because that is what we did.
It's true. I felt a little awkward about it, but they were really cool. So much love to the AFI Silver.
They were so sweet, and they did give us space, and they helped facilitate this conversation. And I don't think that they were totally expecting us to be there.
And here's the thing, Don was supposed to do 15 minutes with us, sign some books before the screening, and that was it. But he so kindly offered to sit with us while the screening was going on so we could have this proper conversation. And really, we got into it. Of course, he's here to promote his book, True Indie. What's the colon, Billy?
True Indie, Life and Death in Filmmaking, which you can order right now on Amazon. And I actually 1,000% recommend that you go out and find this book. Whether you can make it to one of the ongoing tour series that he's have, I think over the next week he's going to be traveling through some places in New York and then some places on the West Coast. I think he's going to hit Utah and maybe Oregon somewhere along the way. Go to the book website, just search Coscarelli True Indie Book Tour. It'll take you to the website for the tour dates. But find the book, whether you can go to these things or not. The book is really great. I think Brad and I had a conversation on the way to the interview about the opening 3 pages of this book. I think it also kicks off our conversation with him. It's really the book in a nutshell in those moments.
Yeah, so we start with the book, and then we go into his career, and we get into a little bit of the state of the industry right now. I love this conversation, and again, I'm just so thrilled to be here post this conversation.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's push him through to the conversation,
okay,
and we'll catch him
okay.
on the flip side.
All right, and now Don Coscarelli. Don, I thought we could start with the first 3 pages of your book, True Indie.
Yeah.
Billy read it first, and he's like, Brad, you have to read these 3 pages. And, it really gets to the heart of how damn hard it is to do it yourself. You're out on the road trying to get the Hurst shot. You're in the back of the trunk with shotguns by your head. You're almost going to kill yourself. I can't believe you are sitting here today because of it, really. But why start the book off with those 3 pages, with the filming of the Hurst chase?
I guess it was my filmic nature. I figured the book needed to start off with a bang, and so I think I approached the book like a screenplay and thought I need to get that opening teaser to really try to nail it somehow. And I was thinking about, well, what scenes could I talk about? And it reminded me of this terrific crew member we had working on. I met him on Jim the World's Greatest, and then he worked on my second film, Kenny and Company, and then he came on in Phantasm, and he was kind of compact in size. He was a surfer, kind of wiry and athletic, and he was a great double for Michael Baldwin, so he did a lot of the stunts for Michael, and he would do all the stunt driving for us. And we, that whole concept that an indie filmmaker's reach needs to exceed their grasp. You got to shoot for the moon, and we're making that movie. And I thought, we gotta have a car chase in this film. Not thinking, what is that going to entail? And then to make it, to show my naivete, we shot it at night. Like, if you're going to do it, you got to light a whole street, and so we found this road. And it was a dead-end road, one of the few dead-end roads in Los Angeles, and it was a tree-lined road, and we just parked our van there for 3 nights, didn't ask anybody,
no permits,
neighbors or nothing, and we ran wire down the street, and we didn't have cranes or anything. We just hung lights in each tree shooting down, and so we had this one, like about a 200-yard stretch that we would just go back and forth through it, And in any case, the payoff of that opening scene is that our star Bill Thornberry would have to throw open this sunroof, and then we were driving at speed, so it was going pretty fast. And then he was going to come up with this shotgun and be shooting at the pursuing hearse, and so he did that. And when we were filming, I remember remarking, he just looked like an action star. He just came up, popped up, and we were filming with blanks. And the thing was, we were so, ignorant of the facts of that kind of stuff, because I always thought, blank charges, no problem
That's
at
not
all.
safe.
Yeah, you can just shoot it, and it doesn't hurt you, But the way they get the blank and the way they get the concussive, muzzle flash is with gunpowder and some wadding, and all that stuff comes out of the muzzle, and it's hot and it's coming out fast, and you don't want to be more than about closer than 10 feet to it, and later, a couple of years later, over the next decade, 2 different actors were killed by mishaps with blank charges, and so we had no clue about any of that. But at any rate, so we're filming it, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be like 2 feet away from the barrel. I gotta pad myself up. So I wore this old jacket because I figured that would do it, and then the camera would kind of block me, but then one side of my head would be exposed. So the camera assistant took a camera pad and put it over my face, and then wrapped gaffer tape, and then put aluminum foil over that, figuring that will stop whatever the problem, if there was any problem. And so we shot the sequence, and then sure enough, got the scene, and then it skidded the car to a stop. I got out, handed off the camera, and George, our surfer stuntman, came around, and he takes one leg and goes, "Dude, your face is on fire." And so that's how I started the book.
It's a hell of an opening, and you had that line in there about, making movies or making independent movies is not like it's being in the army, but it's not with General MacArthur's army. It's with the Viet Cong, and I was really struck by that metaphor.
It's an interesting one. I don't know that war is the exact perfect metaphor, but it feels like it certainly, because you feel besieged from all sides always. But the funny part about it is that if you ever get the opportunity to go see how one of these big budget or major TV series, what the staffing of the crews are like, it blows your mind. Like they come in, it's like a moving city comes in with 125 people, and with transportation departments and trucks, and they've got anything they need. They have, special effects guy. If they're missing a prop, they can cut it and lathe it in the trucks and make it for you. And the resources that they have are insane. But the downside to those things, because I did have an experience with that later when I did that Masters of Horror TV show, is that once you land somewhere with your company, your city of people, you can't move. You're stuck. Like you're all day, you have to shoot in that one spot. And if you 300 yards away, you see, there is a place I want to go to. Forget it. You can't get there because it's just too much people and logistics. So there's a flexibility to shooting independently. And I generally find that, making movies can be fun. But it's some of the professional dictates, like shooting 5 or 6 days in a row. It's very hard to put your logistics together so you can use your time efficiently. But go out for a weekend with some friends and you can shoot some interesting, cool stuff. So I've always gravitated more to that style of filmmaking.
Well, I think about the people who are going to read your book, people like myself, like Billy, who love film, who love independent film, who want to be a part of it, want to get in it. And what those 3 pages do is it shows you the rock and roll side of it, especially the way you end it with your face on fire. But you're also not shy about that it's work.
Oh, this is true.
Yeah.
And this is the other thing which I try to impart, because the interesting thing I think about working in the genre of horror, sci-fi, and fantasy is that, especially lower budget, is, I don't know, for some reason it seems that in the audiences that my movies play to, there are a lot of, I like to think because these kind of movies are more engaging and maybe more intellectually stimulating, but there seem to be more aspiring filmmakers in the audiences, and so I meet a lot of them. And sometimes I'm surprised at how just naive they are about what it's going to take to make some of the projects they're telling me about. And I did want to convey that the one thing is that if you embark on a traditional independent film, now maybe that whole style is going to go away and streaming is going to take over, but you really need to think that to get a film put together, ready to shoot, that's something that has the chance of being good, where you're taking the time and setting it up, you're going to spend a year finding your money, finding your crew, finding your locations, getting your wardrobe, getting somebody who can shoot it, getting all your tests figured out, finding the actors. Spend a year doing that. And then you get so burned out, it's probably going to take you almost another year just to get the post-production done. And then we haven't even talked about marketing and distribution. So it's very easy to, because I've had friends where it's happened. Well, we're shooting here, and we're going to hope to have it at Sundance in September. And I'm like thinking, yeah, right. And then 3 years later, and they've just finally got the thing, submitted to some film festivals and maybe have a distributor or something. So if you're going to embark on the project, you need to have the motivation to pursue it for a period of time of a lot of intense work.
Was that your motivation for picking up the pen or hitting the keyboard for writing the book? I mean, why start?
Well, that was part of it. I think, and I think it really came out of a desire to try something in the print medium, because I'd never really done anything like that. And while I've done a lot of writing, because not only just in the screenplays that I've written, but in the business and seeking distributors, I'm expert at business letters, so I do a lot of writing, and I thought, I could probably do this, maybe, and so it was a challenge, certainly. And but I was really more thinking that it might be interesting to try to do some fiction, would be cool. But then the editor at St. Martin's suggested a memoir, and he'd had a lot of success with the Bruce Campbell memoirs.
Yeah.
Which were, so there was a template there, for some humor and all of that. And so I thought, oh, that's okay. But I still didn't quite get it until I just started writing and saw that I could create a style where I could write a chapter that had a beginning, a middle, and some kind of a punchy ending. And then it was just a function of thinking back through my life, like which of the strange and bizarre and satisfying and horrifying stories I wanted to put into it, And sometimes I'd start on things and I'd go, "Oh, this is getting too negative. I don't want to tell this stuff." And the other ones, it just fell together so easily, So it was. But the best part about it is, and I don't know, we kind of revisited some of that before. I'm probably covering old ground, but was that. Some of my failures early in my career with my first two films, I pretty much compartmentalized, maybe out of protection for myself, I compartmentalized them and didn't think about them. When I really started to analyze, I thought those are really special, memorable experiences that people might enjoy hearing about, especially that first movie, because, we had this, made it, on this grunt labor level of a, hardworking student film. And then one day Universal Studios bought the movie, and my neighborhood friend and I, who made the film, we moved onto the Universal lot at age 19, and it was just a gigantic film factory. It was, at that time, it was almost like the MGM of old, only it was a little more focused on television. They had a television machine. They were cranking out 8 hours of prime time every week, and so we were right in the middle of this factory, and at the same time they were making their feature movies, and they had just, as we were finishing, they just made Jaws, and they made a huge amount of money. And so at that age, witnessing how the studio worked, so I had, in one set of chapters, I could tell a story of starting a really low, and then I'll take it to the heights of Hollywood, and then when the movie didn't gross, back down to the down to earth.
Right, but without Jim and Kenny, you wouldn't have been on that road for Phantasm, right?
And that's true. And see, since I'd forgotten about the movies, now I can see the connections and that was one of the, it's hard to really analyze a career until you're looking at it in the rearview mirror. And so I could look back and go, wow, I made these 3 independent movies in a row pretty concurrently in a period of about, well, let's just call it about 7 years, 8 years. So I made these 3 movies, and all kind of feeding from the same crew members and cast members, and it was, in a way, it was like, how they always say, the third time's a charm, and it was true, because there's nice things in those first 2 movies, but then it was like, and this is, in a weird way, it all came together in Phantasm, and it was this big success that nobody was anticipating at all.
I'm very curious, so having kind of started my way into the book, I've last night consumed these chapters that we're talking about, and I just was utterly fascinated both by the conclusion to that chapter, where they offered you a retainer basically to stay on contract, and that you turned that down, and how that kind of lined up with the fact that even whilst making this movie on Universal Lot, you, if given an opportunity, do it in the studio or just go out on your own with your buds and resume that guerrilla style of filmmaking, you still chose that. That seems to be a part of your DNA very early on. Were you cognizant of that at a young age, or did you just follow it?
I mean, looking back, I don't know that I was cognizant at the time, but now I look back and I see that in a non-confrontational way, I didn't let roadblocks stop me, and it really was like a bumper car thing. I'd like bump into it, and then I'd try to go around, and so just that case that you brought up. I mean, so here we are at Universal, and they say, okay, well, we re-edit the movie, and we need to do 3 days to shoot the connective tissue or the different scenes that'll make it all come together, and we get this budget of like $80,000 for the 3 days of shooting, and this is back in '70s dollars, and
here's $1 million.
Yeah, so it's a lot of money, and then of course, like even a well-prepared, well-produced studio gig, they're logistically challenged, and we don't get the work done in time, and so it's a roadblock. Hey, we didn't get the shots we need to make it work. Well, we got to get them. How do we get it? Well, we can't go ask them for $40,000 more to go back and shoot. So, can you cut us a check for $3,500 and we'll go out that weekend? And you know what? I unfortunately, I don't have access to that film the way I do to other films, but I'd like to take the scenes that we shot with the Universal crew and put them beside the scenes we shot, and they really looked, it's the same film, the same actors, same style, and it looked just fine. It was a couple of long nights of work, and anyway, so interesting taking a look backward on that.
Well, I mean, is that easy for you? Like, was it fun to go like, okay, well, I need to dissect myself for this memoir, or was it, I can't imagine even doing it like my own boring life.
Well, the thing is that the goal was really to take it as a path through the movies. So it's not really, I don't really go into my, personal life or, personal habits or anything like that. It's really a function of my movies and how I lead a very normal life. But I didn't mean to go weird there. But
your films say otherwise. No?
But I mainly wanted to just tell the stories of these. And each film was unique in a lot of ways. I guess some of the Phantasm did sort of repeat themselves, but.
Well, I think what's so interesting about the Phantasm franchise is you've made lots of movies, and I love Beastmaster, I love Survival Quest. Bubba Ho-Tep is like one of our all-time favorite movies.
Love it.
But like Phantasm is this like life saga for you.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a really unique position as a filmmaker, and it's always really been your story.
Well, yeah, and that was wonderful to have that opportunity to explore it, because I mentioned it in the book, but it was really true. It was like, so I'd made Phantasm, 9 years had gone by, and then we were making Phantasm 2. We had a lot more money, still a sub $3 million movie, which is like not that much money, yeah.
Right.
But it was a lot of resources to get good special effects and good sets and good actors. It was all nice. But I just remember walking through the really nice mausoleum set one day and going, God, this was really fun. I could see making these Phantasm movies forever. This is fun. And also, I'm friends with Reggie and Angus, and they're good friends. I love working with them, and so anyway, yeah, it became stretched out to 5 movies over 35 years, and so.
And on the book tour, you're, pairing it with presentations of the new restoration of Phantasm.
Yeah, which is so nice to see it clearly, because so many years I've had to suffer through. You don't have to understand, coming from the 70s to now, went through some primitive technology, because even the film prints from back in the day, there were a lot of flaws and dirt, and scratches and odd colors, depending on whether, some guy in the lab was smoking weed when they mixed the chemicals that morning, for the release prints. So I see it under all kinds of varying circumstances, and now there's, people criticize the digital stuff, but, generally if it's a newer theater with a newer digital projection system, and you bring them your it's called the DCP, a digital cinema package, which is like film print. It's pretty consistent. It looks pretty good from one theater to another, and I mean, that seems like a minor thing, but having had to suffer through, and then having to suffer through 2 decades of the VHS era, where it just looked like,
I had friends who have like a weird nostalgia for VHS. Well, and I was like, don't you remember how terrible it was?
Well, if you're not into having any contrast and having it like milky, murky, and if you've ever sat side by side with the standard def, VHS. Yeah. Even Scott DVDs were such, were heaven compared to the standard def. Those things are so, the resolution horrible. But yeah, I suffer from the same nostalgia.
I was listening to your podcast conversation with Josh Olson and Joe Dante on the movies that made us. I loved that tour through all those films.
That's a nice show.
And you were talking about towards the end streaming and Shudder and curation. And like curation's been a big thing for Billy and I, and how we really need it now more than ever.
Well, there's the website, which I use a lot, that Just Watch, to just find stuff, but it doesn't do any curation because it searches among all streams. Mm-hmm. But one would think, that old, like that old trailer thing of A Hero Will Rise, like you'd think that somebody would come up with a website that just said, like Craigslist, call it Craig's 10, and it would just be the 10 best comedies available on, most challenging and interesting. Somebody who has some film sense, and it's so easy because there's so many of these people programming at the repertory theater. Somebody should start a website. I would go there every night because I would be going, talk with my wife. Well, what do we want to? Let's watch a drama, or let's watch a documentary. Well, what are the 10 most an interesting? They don't have to be the best, but the most interesting.
Well, what is Todd array. At the AFI Silver?
Yeah, well there you
watch.
Well, there you go. Yeah, and you'd have to select, and there are people who are like that, who have those kind of skills, and unlike mortal men and women, they watch insane amounts of movies every day, and could share their knowledge. But yeah, boy, I don't know about you guys, but I go on the. I don't know if any of them are any good. Any of the streaming services, I go to that front thing and I'm like, oh, what am I going to watch? I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch that.
Right.
Oh, what am I going to do? 20 minutes later, too late to watch a movie now.
Never mind.
Yeah. I still think it's a lot like how it was. I'll pick your book up and I'll read and I'll go, oh, you know what? I haven't seen Survival Quest. Well, how do I find Survival Quest? And maybe Survival Quest isn't streaming somewhere. Then I get onto eBay and I find an old DVD or something like that. Yeah. And I think that's still how film communication is happening. One person passing knowledge off to another person.
Absolutely. No, I do the same thing in that I'm reading various blogs or whatever, and I see somebody talking about, the horror genre, and then, they'll fire off a couple of titles that were really popular at Sundance that I completely missed, and then like clockwork, I'll go on Just Watch, and they're not streaming anyway.
Sure.
So anywhere, and so then I'll go to eBay, and usually there'll be some version of it you can grab. But the funny thing about it is that, is also the economics of the business have changed so much. But it's also just in everybody's, because you think about what you used to pay for a DVD and what you still pay for a movie theater. Why would you ever resist picking up a used DVD for like $7.99? It's so much cheaper than the old days buying one, and so much cheaper than taking two people out to a movie. So I've gotten myself into that mindset where if I hear, oh, that looks good, I'm just going to get it on eBay.
Yeah, snatch it. For your own like creative fuel, like what are you consuming? What's getting you through your days entertainment wise?
Well, I do watch. I watch too much streaming. I confess to that. I think the interesting part about people talk about this as being this peak television era, and there's so many shows on, and I've never been so. I don't know if I should say this publicly, but you have to be discriminating. You can't give everyone 10 hours of your time. So you watch the first episode or half of it and go, I'm not going to invest 10 hours in this. And then, 2 days later, 3 more new series have dropped down and you start over. But I watch a broad array of stuff. I'm really enjoying that. Almost finished with that Fauda show. I really like that a lot. It's a suspense thriller from Israel.
Where are you watching that at?
That's on Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. And it's, and let me tell you another thing that's great about some of those international shows. Gosh, I wish I could remember the name of. Some of them have obscure names that I can't remember, but God, I got hooked on this Finnish show. It was so darn good. And the guy who starred in it, who I don't remember his name, but sometimes it's such a pleasure to go into a world that you don't know about, like in Finland. I've never been to Finland, and I've never been to Israel, and then to watch, they're the top actors in Finland and Israel really putting out good product, and it's so refreshing to watch completely new faces, which is so antithetical to the whole movie business, which is always based on, which goes back to Mary Pickford, when the studio guys finally realized, we can brand it around the star and make people watch them over and over again.
It seems like it's shifted a little bit from that. An actor isn't guaranteed to open a film like they once were.
That's true, isn't it, though?
Yeah.
Well, I think, what do I know? But it feels like, could I make a broad a broad statement that are millennials more open to new faces than us older people?
I don't know. I sometimes wonder when I'm talking to my nieces and nephews about movies. Like they like movies. My nieces and nephews anyway they're not the draw anymore. YouTube's the draw.
Yeah.
Video games are the draw. That's where their passion gets filtered into. Now being on Film School Rejects, One Perfect Shot, we encounter a lot of people online who are similarly impassioned.
Yeah.
And that's where I have to go if I'm not over at Billy's house.
Yeah.
Well, it's a weird space to live and operate. I think a lot of times I have to try very hard to remember that the way that I engage with movies and cinema and search around is so many standard deviations removed from I think how most people engage with it. That you recommend a movie to them, that might be the movie that they watch for that entire month.
Right.
So I don't know. Do millennials care more about faces? I don't know. I think I've seen this in my girls. I have 3 girls. My oldest is 9, and she started to.
This is the kid I should hang out with.
Sorry. Look, man. Parenting is I don't know if you get kids or not.
I do. I have 2 kids. Yeah.
Parenting feels a lot of times like such a just make it up as you go kind of thing. Yeah. And she is very aware of the fact that I interview filmmakers and that I write about movies and that's a big part of my life. And so she wants to be part of that. I'll put a movie on and she'll just kind of wander out. Do you remember when Joe Bob Briggs did his Return to Drive-In live on Shudder? Before that series aired, they showed on Shudder TV, they had Night of the Living Dead, the original Night of the Living Dead on that. And I put that on. The kids were in bed, wife and I were kind of sitting on the couch, and we were just letting that run. It's all-time favorite. I love that movie. And she wanders out and just plops down in the chair. And, okay. I mean, if she's curious, I'm not going to shut her down. And so we wind up watching Night of the Living Dead together, and she goes through that. I showed her Bubba Ho-Tep today.
Oh, nice. Now, what was her response to the ending of Night of the Living Dead? Because that's a pretty stark and... how would I describe that? It is a
depressing,
yes, depressing ending.
It is, and she was upset's not the right word, because you think about a kid being upset and it's crying or they're crying and they're frustrated. It's not like that, but she was disturbed by the ending, And honestly, I think the thing that most disturbed her about Night of the Living Dead was when the daughter comes back, reanimates, and murders the mom downstairs with the trowel in the basement.
Yes.
She was very interested in that and very engaged by it, but I think also a little bit disturbed by it. But the cool thing about that, though, is that we finished that movie and we have a conversation about the end of that and kind of maybe the significance of that, because she gets civil rights lessons in school, and so she understands about, kind of the way that society is structured.
Right, yeah.
And so it's a way to have conversations, which I guess all of that is sort of a sideways way of saying that, she as a young kid just gravitates towards things that seems to be interesting to her. Mm-hmm. I showed her Ghostbusters, the new Ghostbusters, which she quite liked, which didn't quite work for me, but she was into it, and I was happy that she loved it. And I showed her the original Ghostbusters, and her takeaway from that was, that's a great story. I wish that the women were the actors in that. And I thought, what a cool opinion, to be outside of that. So I think they just gravitate towards the things that are interesting to them. But there is some, clearly, not that Claire is a...
I would say in that situation, it's curation again, though, right? Dad's curating by what Dad watches. And I think if you love something, you need to put it out there in the world and you need to talk about it. That's what we do, right? Yeah. Bring it back to you, Don.
You don't.
Well, your last couple of films, Bubba Ho-Tep, John Dies at the End, based on books, two really terrific adaptations.
Yes.
And they were instances of you introducing me to really unique writers. Joe Lansdale, in my case, became a lifelong fan. One day friend. And Billy is a big David Wong fan.
Yeah, they're both so brilliant.
I mean, so how did you get to those books? And when you read the not short story, but the novella of Bubba Hotep, why say, I'm going to do that?
Well, the story had a lot of great stuff in it, but the concept had a lot of great stuff in it. I mean, I was really sold with that first dust jacket line where it just said Elvis battles 4,000-year-old mummy, and it was just like, and as I say in my book True Indie, I didn't know that much about Elvis. He was a little before my time. It was more like my mom's friends were into Elvis, but I always had a sense that there was some level of goodness about him, because I think it had to do with the way he was respectful to people, always call him ma'am or sir, he loved his mother, he wanted to fight crime. He just didn't know how to quite direct it, And I don't know, then I saw that little tagline and those sentiments that I had, I went, oh yeah, Elvis could be like the ultimate action hero. He could fight a mummy. What a cool idea that is. And then, of course, the story had so many more layers of the relationships between the friends. It's really a movie about friendship. And, it's, it had a detailed depiction of the President Kennedy in the film. And in the short story, and you finish the short story, and you're really sad when, we don't want to give it away for anybody listening.
But in your book, you talk about how everyone thought you were crazy.
They did. That's true.
To even try to make this story.
No, they kept saying you got to put some young people in it. Shouldn't you focus on some of the workers and the orderlies in the rest home who are in their 20s, and have them see the monster. And I'm thinking, that's kind of really deviates. But, that was one of the great joys of that film, was in a way being vindicated, so that, the film, even at that very first screening we had where there were 20-somethings and 70-somethings, and they all got it and got it well, and that was thrilling.
But what is it in you that when people are telling you this is nuts, this is a dumb idea, no one's going to want to watch this movie?
I wish I was probably more confident when I'm younger, but
It wasn't that long ago.
no. But but believe me, I second guess myself like crazy. You know, I think up until the movie started to gross in the theaters, I was thinking, you know, maybe I'd made a mistake there, and you know, and that's probably why I enjoy coming to these retrospective screenings of the movies, because in a way, you know, it's you know, it's years later, but it's kind of like, oh yeah, you know, you knew what you were doing at the time,
Sure.
and in a way, you know, probably it gives me confidence going into the future, you know, that when somebody immediately dismisses a plan that I have, I go, oh, now wait a sec, in my mind, not to them. I go, okay, maybe they don't know what the hell they're talking about, you know.
What do you use like? So, I think that's inherently a part of indie filmmaking, especially when you're operating outside of a studio system and you're very much embracing doing your own thing. When you encounter those roadblocks, where there's psychological roadblocks, right? Like they're preying at your like imposter syndrome, or am I really doing the right thing here? As a person, what do you like? How do you fortify yourself against that and push ahead? Is it stubbornness?
Bourbon whiskey.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I'm not sure that I do, honestly. I'm always second guessing myself.
Yeah.
You know, so I have to try to just be logical about it, and just because each of the films has its, it has its logical argument for. Like with Bubba Hotep, kind of simple story, doable on the budget, at the time. Bruce Campbell sells a lot of DVDs and Blu-rays.
That's why I showed up.
Yeah, I mean, on the Evil Dead, they probably sold 30 million Blu-rays and DVDs of those things.
And
so that's
30 million variations.
Yeah, that's a like a valid reason to do something. And also, it's Elvis, who is the biggest megastar, probably one of the top 10 still. Not living, but still in existence.
Yeah, I think he's still a best-selling artist.
Yeah, and also with John Dies, there were elements there, even though it seemed as crazy as it was. It was, I don't know if I've been proven wrong or not, but I always thought that there was just a certain quality about the way that Wong told the story, that there was this apathetic quality that I thought might appeal to younger people. I'm not sure if it ended up doing so, but at the time that's what I thought it was, because it was just the way that they'd see the weirdest things, and then they go, "Yeah, that's different," and it made me laugh, and I thought, oh, that'd be kind of fun to try to depict a younger generation response, as some reviewer once called it, like a punk rock Ghostbusters.
Oh, right on.
That's good. Put that on the post. Yeah. Well, here we are at the AFI Silver. Yesterday you were in Austin at the Ritz?
That's true, yes.
And you're going to Beyond Fest next?
No, next is New York Comic Con.
New York Comic Con.
That's right.
So that'll be interesting.
It's got to be a surreal experience, 1979, revisiting that film.
Doing kind of the tour, but on a really, and it's also... But it's fun because they're varying the movie, because in some places they play Phantasm and others Bubba Hotep.
Cool.
So that's different audiences, different feels. So it's great fun, and it's so nice to meet. I think it's going to sound egocentric, but it's like, I think the greatest credit I can take are the kinds of fans I've attracted to these movies, because they come out to the events and they want to talk passionately about how they came to each of the movies, and they have interpretations. Last night, somebody had an interpretation of Phantasm that I'd never heard before, which was my seeming obsession with hands. And I went, okay, tell me about that. And they said, well, in Phantasm, we see the palm on the sign there, and then we see another, which I've forgotten now, but there's another. I don't know if it was the fingers getting chopped off. Something else, and then in the ice cream truck, there's the block of ice where it's melted in it. There's a hand you can see. What's the meaning of that?
And your answer was?
My answer was, I'll take that under advisement. I'll start thinking about it.
Well, that's who Billy and I are. We've wormed our way. We've tricked our way into in the AFI to talk to you today.
Yeah, that was really cool. Thanks for having me. I want to finish that one last thought, though.
Yes.
No.
I just want to finish that thought. The fans, they're so kind and warm and eager to analyze those movies, and it just. Every time I talk with them, I go, okay, that's why I made the movie. So I could convey some aspect to these folks, and then they want to come back and share it back with me, and it's kind of a little loop that's pretty cool. And that's the tour has just been an absolute blessing.
Lifelong filmmaker, Brad and I are writers about movies. That's what movies are, though, right? It's not just sitting in a dark theater watching somebody else's story on the screen. It's about connections and conversation and interpretation and finding out who people are. Brad and I, when we disagree about movies, those are my favorite conversations because we can argue over interpretations, and as long as we keep it civil, mostly he does.
You're so wrong all the time.
As long as we keep it civil, you learn about yourself and you learn about other people. That connection, I can absolutely see why that's rewarding to be feeding that cycle.
It forces a critical analysis on you afterwards, where you're being challenged to remember the storyline after, because let's face it, there are a lot of movies are disposable, and you see them and you never think about them again. But those ones that you can chew on, and they're great memories, because as you said that, I was triggered thinking. God knows how many years ago, but I just remember going to a screening with a director friend of mine, and I think my son was there, and the wife of the director, and we had seen Fight Club, and we went out and just were talking, what the hell did that mean? And one of us wasn't that keen on it, another of us embraced it, and pretty soon we kind of had switched places, and it's that the post-movie analysis is invigorating, and one of the real reasons I like movies, because I'm always looking for that one where something that you can chew, a full meal that you can chew on for weeks and months afterwards,
or decades after.
Or decades, yes. Yes, I'm still chewing on 2001.
Yeah. Oh man, 2001, just one of my all-time favorite experiences, and a movie that when I saw in my teens was one thing, 20s another thing, 30s, and then 40s. It's always different.
Yeah, it's amazing. But in any case, well, listen, guys, thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much.
I enjoyed the different kind of
I wanted
discussion.
to leave you on an impact that you had on both of our lives. And it's with Phantasm.
Oh, yeah.
We have a buddy, Robert, who always spoils movies for us.
Okay.
He has to tell us the end. He'll text us the end before we see a movie. It's infuriating.
Yeah, that's terrible.
And I learned a year ago
the
reason he does that is when, in 1979, he saw Phantasm. And when the tall man comes through the mirror, he was so scared he had to know the ending of every movie he saw afterwards.
You're kidding.
So we met him at a Barnes & Noble. We worked together at a Barnes & Noble together.
Wow.
And we worked during Harry Potter. The seventh book comes out. He turns to the last page of Harry Potter, reads in the break room of the Barnes & Noble. He reads the ending of Harry Potter.
Well, I hope
ruins it for a lot of us because of Phantasm.
I hope we didn't permanently damage him. That's too
He's
bad.
still around. He's still around pestering us.
We'll take that as praise, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
That's pretty interesting, though.
Well, Don, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks
we
for having
really
me.
appreciate it.
This is really great.
Thank you. And we're back to the car in the parking lot.
We're from the car to the AFI. I don't know what happened. What's happening?
Yeah, I hope you really enjoyed that conversation as much as we did. Again, thank you, Don, for spending so much time with us. You really didn't have to, but we're ever so grateful. And he was super cool afterwards because, of course, we brought our books to get signed, we brought our Blu-rays to get signed, and he did all that, and he was very, very lovely.
Well, I mean, but you hear in the conversation that he does find the fanship for Phantasm and his other movies to be restorative.
Right.
And that was true to life, man. He was so sweet after the interview, and he was so generous with his time. I don't know. He's rad. We're best friends forever.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So please seek out his book, True Indie. What's the colon again, Billy?
True Indie.
Uh-huh.
Life and Death in Filmmaking.
Yes.
And buy this book. All right, guys? Like we always say, support indie film, right? Like, let's give Don Coscarelli a little bit more money to go make a movie. Let's give him some interest, all right?
Well, and it's great fuel for your own creative engine.
No, it really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
And you know what? Gotta love the AFI Silver. Thanks again for letting us take over. And be sure to check out the Spooky Movie International Horror Film Festival. You can go to spookyfest.com, see what they've got going. I know Mandy is coming up, although when this posts, you probably already missed your opportunity to see Mandy. And if you haven't seen it on the big screen, you're really doing yourself a disservice because it's meant to be seen on the big screen. Billy, where can we find you online? You
can find me at WBDAS on Twitter and Instagram, where I now only occasionally Instagram.
Yeah, that's true. Follow the other dorks at the Disco Dork, at the Turtle Dork, at Sidewalk Siren, and I am Brad Gullickson at Mouth Dork on all social medias. And wow, this was one for the books.
Send some love to Don Coscarelli at Don Coscarelli on Twitter.
And I think it's at Don_Coscarelli on Instagram.
Oh, okay, good. That's good.
Just FYI.
Good
He's got one of those Brian Turtle Dork problems going on. Anyway, until next time, dorks.